Oh, I think you guys, does it make you guys accept it? I think.
Oh, okay. Mine says recording, so.
All righty. Yeah, apparently it might have been recording for. All right. Okay. Welcome into the special episode 1 of the Barking Brown Show. I'm your host, Jacob, over at Roachism13. I'm joined by my wonderful co-host, Nick Carnes at Carnesy817, and our very sexy special guest, Mr. Stephen Thomas over. Is it your ad is Brown's mock draft, correct? Or
correct.
Is it Brown's daily? Okay.
Yeah,
I couldn't remember if daily
draft.
was in, if the word daily was in the at or just in the title.
Yeah, and if I'm your sexy guest, I shudder to think who you've had on before if I qualify as sexy. So, but I appreciate the compliment nonetheless.
Guys, we're here tonight. If you are checking this out tonight, it is Thursday. You are on the Patreon. We already have 4 members as of recording right here, which makes us accomplish the one thing I never thought I've always dreamed of, and Nick has always dreamed of. We are now technically, very minimally, but technically paid to talk about football. We technically got paid. That is the big dream. We're not quite on Stephen Thomas's verified level yet, so we're not quite as good of people as him.
This is true.
Just following in the very, very awesome footsteps of our great guest tonight.
I still love that GIF. Verified. What does it say? Verified, just better people.
Simply better people. Yeah, I was sitting down one night because, when they opened it up again a few weeks ago, whenever that was, everybody at the OBR, we were like, oh, well, do we have any idea what the requirements are? So, I tried one way and Jake tried another way. Like everybody tried, what do they want? What do they not want? What matters? All that kind of stuff. And just by sheer luck, I was the only one that got the check the first time. And so in our meetings, they were giving me a hard time, like, oh, you think you're better than us now, all that kind of stuff. And instead of fighting it, I just decided to run with it. And so I've been relentless on them in meetings at this point. And then the one night I had a couple of drinks and I put that video together to open our show, and people seemed to like it. So I took the very end and made a GIF out of it because it was I had no script. I just turned on the microphone and just started making crap up.
I love it.
So yeah, but it was fun. But I ultimately, who cares? It makes no difference. I mean, it's nice, but whatever. It makes no difference.
It's fun.
Like when and so I made the egregious error of not following you sooner, Stephen. And so when I did, it's just there's a different feeling when you see like someone with a check mark has followed you back. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. I'm just saying. It's like there's not that many people out there that do that, and then it's like, oh wow, someone important followed me. That's pretty cool. I don't know.
I think the biggest thing that got me through to the blue check mark was they have apparently lowered the bar significantly. So I'm appreciative of that. So but if I gave you a brief moment of happiness, I'm glad I was there to help.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So if you are watching on Thursday, you are on our Patreon. We thank you. We love you. If you are not, you would have received, if you are watching this on YouTube, listening to the podcast version, this is now Saturday or Sunday for you. If you would like early access to our special episodes, as well as our newsletter, our group chat. Yeah.
Fun group chat.
Which includes weird 2 a.m. emails from me when I'm, lonely. And my wife has kicked me to the couch. And as well as we will be doing exclusive merch giveaways starting in September, and the newsletter will come out next Saturday. So not this Saturday with the Jaguars, but the second Saturday we will be on there. So you can check us out, patreon.com/Barking Brown Show. Now, guys, let's get straight into it. We got an action-packed night tonight. We're going to preview the preseason. We're going to talk about some guys that are going to be playing. We're not really going to focus on the guys that aren't going to be playing. So it's interesting with Coach talk today about most of the starters not being in, which I think we're all 3 in agreement is the 100% the right call. Mm-hmm. I think you should bubble wrap them and put them in the basement. Was it you, Stephen? Somebody I heard the other day, somebody said something about strapping them to a bed so that they don't.
No, that wasn't me.
That wasn't.
It does sound like something I would say. I would admit that. but it wasn't me. No.
I wonder, that might have been Pete Smith, actually. It might have been Pete that said that. I listen to so many Browns podcasts that at some point they just blend in a little bit. And I'm like, well, that sounds like something Steven would say.
It does.
So let's start this off tonight. Let's talk about the guys on let's focus on defense first. Let's start around, and we'll start with you, Steven, and then go to Nick and then myself. And it doesn't have to be a young guy. It can be a young guy. But somebody that's going to play this weekend on the defensive side that you're probably the most excited to watch, to see what he has, see what he's developed, see what he still has, if he's an older guy or a guy coming from an opt-out perhaps, or something along those lines. But somebody on the defense that right now is number one on that side of the ball for you Saturday.
Well, I think for sure, when we talk about, no starters could play, that's mostly on the offensive side. Yeah. The defense with, depending on who wins certain camp battles, up to 9 new starters. They need to get out there. I mean, Miles doesn't, Clowney doesn't. I mean, maybe a series or two just to knock the rust off and get some timing down and stuff like that. But those guys really don't need to play much. Everybody else, with that many new starters, they need to gel as much as possible. And, the preseason is what it is. You're not getting the same game speed, the same reps against the same level of competition, but just to get out there and learn each other a little bit, because you don't want them going out there week one lining up against Patrick Mahomes and company with no reps together under their belt. That seems like a recipe to give up 57 points. So I think the defense definitely is going to, or at least I think they should play more than the offense. They're not going to play the whole game or anything. But as far as who am I, boy, there's so many, because there's so many camp battles out there. The one big one for me, if I'm just going to pick one, would be the corners. How much does Greedy play? How much does Greg Newsome play? Who wins that battle to be the number 2? And in Greg Newsome's case specifically, how many of his preseason reps are inside versus outside? Because I thought that was an extremely interesting thing. He played a lot of snaps inside at Northwestern, but it wasn't really talked about much during the draft cycle. He was basically only mentioned as an outside corner. But then when Joe Wood said that at the end of it was either OTAs or minicamp, one of them, when he said we've worked him inside, I went, that's interesting. And if he can show that he can play on a high level inside, and Greedy comes back healthy and becomes what a lot of people thought he could be during his draft cycle, well, now you're in a really tremendous and advantageous position as far as your cover unit, because you can put out there at the same time Denzel, Greedy, a number 1 pick in Greg Newsome, and Troy Hill. And those are your top 4 guys. Now you throw the safety room onto that, JOK covering on the second level as whatever you want to call him, a linebacker, a hybrid, a rover, whatever, and all that kind of stuff. Man, you can cover a lot of people. And that front 4 is going to be devastating as a pass rush if they're all healthy. So it's pretty exciting if all of that comes true. Now, if Greedy doesn't come back healthy, or doesn't show what we think he can be, because for all intents and purposes, it's his 3rd year, but Greedy's still a rookie. I mean, he didn't play at all last year. He played 12 games or something like that as a rookie. He was nursing a hammy the whole time, and it was the Freddie year, which we later learned was even more of a nightmare than we thought it was inside the building. So we really haven't seen him. He, for all intents and purposes, he's still a rookie. But if only one of them works out, you're still in good shape, with your starting 2 corners and Troy Hill in the slot. But if they can both come through, and Greg Newsome shows that he can be a starter, if you want to use that word, on the inside, boy, does that open a lot of possibilities for Joe Woods to be super aggressive and disguise things and be hybrid defenses and all this. It's really exciting if both of those guys can come through.
I think it's interesting you talk about that with Newsome playing inside and outside, because I just the way my schedule lines up, I get to listen to the player interviews from camp every day. And I think it was yesterday, Newsome said that he's been playing 60-40 outside, inside. Right. And I know we're talking about defense right now, but there's something that I've definitely taken away from listening to all of these, is that the Browns coaching staff is emphasizing cross training. Whether they've talked about Donovan Peoples-Jones learning multiple wide receiver positions, and they've talked about the the linemen playing guards and tackle, and then they've obviously with Newsome playing inside and outside. So I think that versatility that they preach is definitely being practiced in what they're doing in camp so far, which is definitely really cool to see. But for me, and I know that was a bit of a long-winded part there, but for me, I think the defensive line is so interesting to me. And Jacob and I have talked about this a whole bunch. And honestly, I have no idea how it ends up playing out. But I interviewed Jordan Elliott today, and they were asking him if he expects to be a starter or if he expects to contribute significantly or really where he's going with that. And he said, I'm just going to give it my best effort. I'm going to try as hard as I can, and whatever happens after that happens. And so I think I'm assuming Jordan Elliott's going to play significantly in the preseason, and I would love to see in his second year, because I don't think we saw a whole lot from him in year one, what he has and what he can be. Because I mean, that is a third-round pick. So I think that comes attached with some amount of expectation, and I was really excited when they picked him. So I'm looking for him especially to hopefully take that next step to be a significant contributor along the defensive line.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that was another spot. I mean, if I had to pick one, I would pick the corner, but you could pick just about anywhere on the defense. Yeah. And it's going to be interesting because there's so many new faces, and the interior defensive line rotation is absolutely, because we all expect, barring something weird, Malik Jackson and Andrew Billings are going to be at the front of that rotation. Now, behind him, Jordan Elliott, and I was like you, I was a big Jordan Elliott fan during his draft cycle, and I thought he was a great pick at 88. And you're right. If anybody who's picked top 100 is expected to come in and, if not start, at least heavily contribute pretty much right away. And giving up on a top 100 pick after only one season, especially such a weird season like last year where the rookies had no offseason in person and, limited practice time, everything that happened last year, we all know, would be, I think, a huge defeat. But you look at the guys that they brought in into that room, they went for a numbers approach. They've got like 8 guys in the interior defensive line room, and 4 of them, maybe 5, probably 4, but maybe 5 are going to make the initial 53. And they gave Marvin Wilson a priority UDFA bag. They brought in Malik McDowell at absolutely no risk, but and to me it seems like he's trending towards going on season-ending IRR. They're trying to find a way to stash him and give him a year to get back up to speed, because he hasn't played in like 4 years. But you've got Marvin Wilson, Tommy Togiai. He's a 4th-round pick. I would fall down if he didn't make the roster. But Sheldon Day is, he's a guy, but he's a veteran who's been around. He knows how to play. He gives you good reps. Damian Square, I thought, was a very underrated signing. Again, he's not Aaron Donald, but he's going to give you solid reps. He does his job. He's got some pass rush wiggle. He's pretty stout against the run. He's a guy that I think they were both brought in as insurance, if that makes sense. Like, we've got all these young guys, but if none of them pan out, we know we can stick these 2 guys out there and get acceptable levels of interior defensive line play. So I think whoever ends up winning that battle, they're going to be okay. I'm not worried about it like some people are. I get why they are, because there's a lot of unknowns in there. Even the top 2 guys, Andrew Billings took the year off, like you said, so you never know. He looks great, and I loved the signing at the time. But after a year off of football, you never know what you're going to get from a guy, especially early. Malik Jackson is a great veteran, but he's 32, I think. He's going to turn 32, so you never know when those guys are going to start to take a step back. Doesn't look like it in camp, but you never know. So I'm not particularly worried about it. But if you force me to guess right now, I would say those 2 guys, Billings, Jackson, Togiai, and then one of Marvin Wilson or Jordan Elliott is going to make the 53, because unless Marvin Wilson goes on season-ending IR, they're not getting him to the practice squad. He was highly coveted as UDFA, which is why they had to give up so much for him. They can try. I would be shocked if they waived him and he made it through to the practice squad. Now, Malik McDowell, I think they can waive and get through to the practice squad, because if someone picks up a guy you waive, they have to put him on their active 53. And if he hasn't shown enough in Cleveland to make the active 53, I could be wrong, but I would find it difficult that another team would give up one of their roster spots for a guy that hasn't been on the field for that long. So if you're looking at it from that perspective, those would be my guesses right now. But again, we haven't even played the first preseason game. Probably somebody's going to get hurt. Happens every year, so which will slide things around and,
maybe make it easier.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, let's say McDowell, they sneak him onto IR. Same thing for Marvin Wilson, and pick one of the other guys. Sheldon Day, tweaks a knee or whatever. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Well, now your decision's a lot easier because there's only 5 guys to choose from. You know. So, but as it stands right now, those would probably be the 4 that I would lean towards at this exact moment.
So it's funny that you bring up Jordan Elliott, Nick, because we talked on our regular show this week that I find it very plausible that he might be in trouble. Like it seems like the way things are playing out in the Orange and Browns practice, as well as the other training camp practices, it is something Pete Smith, I've heard him say it a million times. We talk about Jordan Elliott's rookie year. He said, he thinks that D tackle is one of the hardest positions for a rookie to play, which it is. And when someone like Pete, I know people like to rag on Pete because he hates Jarvis, and he doesn't hate Jarvis Landry. I've said this a million times. He just hates the contract, but he does play it up quite a bit, and he knows what he's doing. But when Pete says, hey, this is one of the, from my opinion, this is a hard position. And like you said, Stephen, it was a really hard year for Jordan Elliott, but like at a certain point, that's what I got. I got a lot of hate for my Mac Wilson take, even though I wasn't hating on him this week. And a lot of them say, well, he wasn't healthy last year. Okay. But what are you going to, I don't know if his mind was right. Like, I got legitimately told that he was so scared that he was going to lose his job because he was not healthy. First off, that linebacker room was not good. So anybody with a pulse was going to keep their job in there in certain roles, because I think Malcolm Smith, I think B.J. Goodson, and Jacob Phillips at times, there was plenty to like in that room. But people said, he was pressing because he was worried about losing his job. That same thing goes with Jordan Elliott. At a certain point, you need to produce. Mm-hmm. So Jordan Elliott, Mac Wilson, you need to produce. And it doesn't necessarily just have to be Saturday, but it has to start Saturday. It has to I haven't heard anything about Jordan Elliott, like in general.
I haven't either.
And me and Nick were up. We were at camp on the 31st, but there was a non-padded practice, and they practiced on the other field most of the time, and we couldn't see anything. But they didn't have pads on. But it's like you haven't heard anything about Jordan Elliott. At least Mac Wilson is somewhat out there, I guess.
Well, and you're right. It's the NFL is a production business, and it's a cold business. And there's a million guys busting their humps working out right now, just begging for an invite. Just give me a chance. Yeah. Just give me a chance. Yeah. And the Browns, as we were talking about off the air before we started here tonight, this isn't 2016. This isn't 2017, where if you have even a glimmer of promise, they were going to keep you to see what they could develop. This is a legitimate contending team at this point. They are going to be cutting NFL caliber players that are going to go other places and not be fringe guys. There are some guys that they're going to have to cut or trade. They're going to go take significant snaps somewhere in the league this year. So, yeah, I mean, whether you're Mac Wilson, whether you're Jordan Elliott, whether you're a rookie, whether you're a 10-year veteran, you don't show, you're not making this roster. So as hard as it would be to move on from a top 100 pick after only one season, like I said, and it would be a draft L for me because I was a big Jordan Elliott guy during his draft cycle. You don't play, you don't produce, you don't play. I mean, you got to make this roster now. So, and they're definitely, I don't know if in trouble is the right word, but they're definitely not secure in their roster spots at this point. So I'm with you 100%.
And me and Nick said this the other day, Andrew Berry just does not strike me as a person. Like I said this at the beginning, and I've kind of changed my tone, but at the beginning of this offseason when we were trying to, and me and Nick made our 53 man before training camp, just we're having a little bet about it.
Yeah.
And, for one, we're going to pull Steven in on this one real quick. So there's 2 bets.
Okay.
And we need you to pick a side.
Oh, geez.
We're not going to go with the 53 man bet because that one's like a big bet. And there's a lot of potentially terrible consequences, like wearing a Steelers jersey for an entire episode.
Ugh.
Like, I mean, there is some, I don't think we're going with that. We have like our friend Andy Manchin. I don't know if you follow Andy. He does the beer chugs on Sundays on Twitter. He's came up with the rules for us. And we have to pick. We still haven't picked. We're terrified of these, but we have a bet where the loser has to say something nice about how great of an organization the Pittsburgh Steelers is for 30 seconds. And that is because Nick told me that one Kadarrell Hodge will not make the 53 man.
I did say that.
So a side note here, before I go into my defensive guy that I'm really the most excited about, where do you come out on the team Hodge debate? It came to me and I'm just kind of curious.
I like him tremendously, and I think the team does too. And he has shown why, again, this camp, that they are very, very high on him. I don't know if that's one of the things we're going to find out, that 3-4-5 wide receiver, although the way DPJ has looked the first couple of weeks of camp, it's starting to look more like a 4-5 battle rather than a 3-4-5 battle. It's just camp. It really is irrelevant in the long run, but that's the way it looks right now.
DPG stan.
Yeah.
I'm an enormous DPJ stan. Everybody knows.
It looks like Higgins and Hodge. I would keep them both. If it were me, I would want them both because they do different things and they both do them well. And Kadarrell Hodge is a lot better than a lot of the fan base thinks. He's big. He's extremely fast. He's savvy route runner. He's got great hands. He blocks his ass off, and he's willing to go out there and play specials. So he's one of those guys that I think they're going to give every opportunity to make this roster. If you ask me to guess right now, I think he's going to make the 53, but there's a very logical situation in the way this shakes out that he doesn't. It's one of the interesting camp battles to watch. And, frankly, as much as we hate them, just to tag onto your bet here, it's not hard to say something nice about the Pittsburgh Steelers. They got 6 Super Bowls. They've been winners. It's part of why we hate them so much.
Yeah.
There are rivals and it's proximity, but part of it is also they're 75 miles away from us, and for the last 20 years have been polar opposites. I mean, every year we say, oh, well, they lost this guy on offense, then this tight end and this linebacker. They're done. And they just put some guy out there that nobody's ever heard of, and he has an all-pro year. That doesn't happen over and over and over by accident. There are things about the way they run their organization that I don't particularly like, but it's very difficult to argue with their model and their success. It really is.
He'll have plenty to say, because Nick will lose. He'll have plenty to say, but it just won't be comfortable.
No,
that's it.
And I just want to say, I'm not knocking Kadarrell Hodge the player.
No.
I just, as I went through the roster, I thought that I needed more. I think particularly, and it was interesting that you said you talked about 4 or 5 defensive linemen, Steven, being kept ultimately.
4, I'm sorry.
So 4, right? See, I thought that the Browns would need to keep more than that just because of the inexperience of the room, and so that's kind of where I was coming from. Which I know we're going off on tangents here, but I went on a couple long shots and I picked Malik McDowell to make the final roster. And you alluded to potentially sneaking him on an IR. My heart hurts right now.
Hey,
but I think you're thinking along the way. It's definitely at some point it becomes a numbers game. Like I said, they're going to cut guys that they don't want to cut or trade them, hopefully, for some kind of return. Once you get beyond definitely 45, but really realistically, once you get beyond spot 40, 42 on any NFL roster, it can change not because of anything you did or didn't do. If they think they need to keep an extra whatever, if they want to keep 10 offensive linemen, well, then somebody's, there's one less tight end or one less IDL or one less corner. I mean, there's only 53 slots. So, and he's, as much as I've talked up Kadarius Hodge here in the last 5 minutes, and I think rightly so, he's a terrific player. He, depending on how it shakes out, he could fall victim to that. I don't think so, but it's definitely a logical potential outcome, especially as we sit here on August, whatever it is, and we haven't even played a preseason game yet.
It's interesting about that, and then we're just bouncing around. I love it. That's what I love about doing shows with Nick and listening to you, Steven. I knew you would be fantastic with the style that we like to talk and things like that. And you're always fantastic when you are talking.
I am.
Yeah. And one thing I could see that could potentially cost Kadarius Hodge is if, and this is going to be like a really weird way to say this, if Demetric Felton is not running back 3, D'Ernest Johnson is, then Felton might be running back 4/wide receiver 6, which then means you're not keeping 7. There's no way you keep 7. No. So if you think that this year, and I currently think that as we sit here on August 12th, the better runner is D'Ernest Johnson, but the most explosive player is Demetric Felton. And if you're sitting here and you're like, I mean, you could trade Kadarius Hodge for edge depth. Like, that's another conversation to have. But if you're sitting here and you're like, in 2021, Demetric Felton's main role is going to be as a receiver, then he potentially, his roster slot, so to speak, and as I say in air quotes, could be Kadarius Hodges as opposed to D'Ernest Johnson's. When I made my 53, I had him as running back 3, but I would love to keep all 4 of them. I would. It's one of those things where I really like all 4 running backs, and I hope we can do it. So that's my take on how Kadarius could not make
I think you're absolutely right. And it's because of some other players in different spots. It's not just, like I said, it's not just your position group that could end up making decisions in your position. On the defensive side, in a similar situation, if JOK shows the coverage ability in the short areas, especially that we saw at Notre Dame, if that translates to the NFL level on a level that they feel comfortable with, maybe the bottom end of the cornerback room gets knocked by one, and so similar to what you're saying, they could keep Demetric Felton making it. Again, you're not going to get him to the practice squad. So he's either on the 53 or he's playing somewhere else. I really don't think they want to do that. So I think his chances are really good. And again, D'Ernest Johnson has done nothing wrong. D'Ernest Johnson has been a spectacular running back 3 in that room. He's done absolutely nothing wrong. But instead of it costing Kadarius Hodges' spot, which is possible, I think it's more like Andy Janovich his spot, because last year at this time, well, not at this time, last spring, we were all talking, as I'm sure you guys remember, because in Brown's Twitter, we talk everything to death. That's what we like to do. We were talking, Kevin Stefanski's offense is bringing the fullback. He used the fullback a ton in Minnesota. It's going to, Andy Janovich, he's going to get this, he's going to get that, he's going to get this. And it started off with quite a bit of fullback. As the season wore on, and I understand he had the COVID issues, fullback got less and less and less and less. So, and they have been doing this in camp, if you've been paying attention. If they think that the 4th tight end can come in and take those H-back duties that you would normally assign to a fullback, or they think that, Demetric Felton is just too good to give up and they don't want to give up on D'Ernest Johnson. If they think they can then cobble together the fullback responsibilities from other guys, fullback is a luxury position in the NFL at this point. Again, Andy Janovich would have done nothing wrong in this scenario. He just loses out in a numbers game. So if they keep all 4, I think it's more likely, as we sit here today, that it costs Andy Janovich his spot than Kadarius Hodge or Rashard Higgins, whoever loses out that battle. But you could be right. Absolutely, you could, because they're definitely the wide receiver. We know the top 2.
Yep.
It looks as if, unless he falls off a cliff or gets hit by a bus, DPJ is 3. They're not cutting Anthony Schwartz. Absolutely not, under any circumstance. Maybe he goes to season-ending IR if this hamstring turns out to be much worse than I think it is. I don't think that happens, but it's it's out there at this point. So that brings it down to Rashard Higgins and Kadarius Hodge. And it's sad because, guys like Alexander Hollins and Derek Willis before he retired, and even JoJo Natson, These are guys that can give you snaps. Ryan Switzer can play in the NFL. He has shown it. They have, unless somebody gets injured in front of them, basically no chance to make this roster. So if they decided to do that, if it was Felton versus wide receiver 6, if that's the decision that they had to make, then they would, as you said, Kadero Hodge or Rashard Higgins, whichever one of them loses out on that battle, try to trade them. Now, you're not going to get, J.J. Watt. I don't want anybody to think we're suggesting that, but you can get maybe a pick in a future round, or if they decide they want more edge depth, you get that, or another corner that somebody else is going to cut, and we think he'd be a good back end of our corner. Those kind of trades happen every year at the end of camp, and I think the bottom of our wide receiver room, the bottom of our offensive line room, and potentially as much unknown as we just discussed about it, the bottom of that interior defensive line room could fetch some kind of to restock the future picks and that sort of thing.
Never forget the Browns got a 4th-round pick for a punter.
I'll never forget that.
God bless Sashi Brown, man. Yeah.
I'm telling you, I've said it, and I know you, other people have said it, but I still think, Sashi, he crawled so that Andrew Berry could run. I mean,
I agree.
In the end, I'll never forget that he paid $16 million for Nick Chubb. In the end, that's what he did. I mean, he did what he was supposed to do. He was at the beginning of the tear down rebuild. Plus, at that time, we all remember it was a power struggle in that building because they weren't all in on analytics. Depot and those guys, they said, we want to hire this guy, and they only hired the one. They didn't hire the coach that they wanted to mesh the two together like we've seen in this incarnation. And it became a behind-the-scenes power struggle, which we all learned about. We knew, if you were paying attention, but we learned about in big, bold letters during Hard Knocks, how much infighting was going on. And ultimately, the owners, as is their right to do, sided with the coaching staff over the analytics of the front office. I didn't agree with it at the time, but that's what they did. And they write the checks. They can make whatever decision they want. The hell they want.
Kudos to them for finally getting it right now. But at the time, it was, he created a lot of capital that is showing up now on this current team. Now, I don't say that, I'm not waiting. Who deserves more credit, John Dorsey or Sashi Brown? You know what GM I think deserves the most credit for the last year? Andrew Berry. Andrew Berry. If John Dorsey was still here, they would not have had that year last year. I guarantee it 100%. They did things. John Dorsey drafted Nick Chubb, drafted Baker Mayfield, drafted Denzel Ward. He did all of those things. He traded for Odell Beckham. Sashi Brown gave him all the weapons to make all of those acquisitions. So, yes, they did both contribute. But whenever somebody asks me that question, who do you credit more? I say Andrew Berry because it's 100% true.
So I'll slide all the way back to our defensive side of the question. And a guy that I love battled some injuries last year, some inconsistencies as well. But I would assume nothing has suggested that he won't. Maybe he doesn't play as much because, I guess Anthony Walker is back, which was very quiet because we got a lot of soft tissues issue. Yeah. I tweeted a couple of yesterday that nobody was talking about Anthony Walker being back, and I think we had all these hamstring and soft tissue issues that we didn't talk about the guy that came back. But a guy that I am just, and Nick knows this. We've only been doing the show since this draft cycle, but me and Nick have been friends for a little while longer, and he knows I absolutely love Jacob Phillips. Jacob Phillips is my guy.
Great pick.
And all I cannot stop thinking about week 17 and the way he just flew sideline to sideline. And all I can think about is, and I love Anthony Walker, but when it comes to like speed packages, because we saw the Colts take Anthony Walker off the field at times on third downs in some of these, spread him out situations, as he is a better thumper than he is a coverer, though I think he's a better coverage guy than I think some people think he is. But either way, all I can think about is, how do you defend Lamar? Like, there is no Lamar stopper. And I know I've heard you say that a million times. There is no Lamar stopper. However, how do you defend a guy that spreads it out? Speed and coverage. And all I can think about is Jacob Phillips and JOK flying next to each other, sideline to sideline, against some of these spread. Like, I think of week 17, that Jacob Phillips, and I look at JOK and what he's been doing. I mean, Jake said it. Jake was at the Orange and Brown practice, and I heard him in his recap show say that JOK just flies.
Mm-hmm.
The dude just flies. And all I can think about is, JOK, you take that half, Phillips take that half. Who's getting past that? You know, obviously they're not going to make a stop every single play. But I am so excited to see what Jacob Phillips does Saturday. I assume he'll play a decent amount. Anthony Walker is back, so Anthony Walker would probably – I don't see a reason to play Anthony Walker, so probably more snaps for Jacob Phillips. He's my dude. He was the dude for me all year long when he was out, and everybody was like, we need a linebacker, which it really was not as bad as people act like. They were all role players outside of maybe one of them. Anyway, Jacob Phillips was my solution last year. And so for me, I got to see 50 out there this weekend.
Yeah, I think he was a terrific pick, and he has been, as you said, a lot faster than I expected. Because when he was at LSU, and I remember during the draft cycle, because our mutual friend Jeff Lloyd just loved him, and he turned me on to him, and I kept watching, and I kept saying, he's not a guy that's going to overwhelm you with athleticism. This was during his draft cycle, but he knows he's smart. If he's supposed to fill A, he fills A. If he's supposed to backside support, then he's backside support. He knows what he is supposed to do, and he does it. And he was a sure tackler at LSU. If he found the ball carrier's face hit the ground, which is what we lacked before that tremendously. So many missed tackles over the years. We all remember that. So, but yeah, he was injured. He had the COVID thing, and obviously with the no off season and all that, he looked like a rookie quite a bit last year. Yeah. Towards the end, he looked like a different guy, absolutely. And I said that when people were screaming to take a linebacker in the first round, I kept saying, you guys are underrating Jacob Phillips. You're underrating him. Now, I think you're absolutely right. I have said this several times, both in print and on our show. I think moving forward, I would not be surprised at all if Anthony Walker, JOK, and Jacob Phillips are the three main guys, and everyone else in that room moves on after this year. Not that someone like Sione, I don't think has done anything wrong, but again, I think he's just going to lose out to a numbers game for the future, not for this year. But if you want to go particularly as to defending Lamar, yes, faster linebackers definitely helps, but over the 3 years, it's been proven the way you contain that Ravens offense, and it's happened in the playoffs how many years in a row, is by 6-7 defensive backs who are big, fast enough to chase him down and big enough to tackle. And we have that now with the additions of John Johnson and Greg Newsome and healthy Ronnie Harrison and everything. As far as stopping Lamar, I think Jay, you're absolutely right. He is fast enough to catch him if Lamar doesn't get, I don't think he's fast enough to go step for step with him. There's very few people in the league that are. But he can definitely cut down the angles and help the pursuit and all that kind of stuff. I think the bigger area, as far as specifically defending Lamar, where JOK will help, is what we touched on earlier, his coverage ability. Because for 20 years, we have watched opposing tight ends in the 8 to 15 yard area. They catch a pass, and we go, there's nobody. Where is everybody? I mean, they're like 8 yards open, like college level open. He's tremendous in that area. And as much as Lamar Jackson likes to run, and he does, if you pay attention, when he breaks contain, his first thought is always, where's Mark Andrews? Yes. He finds Mark Andrews when he's outside of the pocket consistently, and it drives us batty. I hate it when Mark Andrews catches those passes. And I think taking that away, and as much as this sounds weird to say, forcing him to run more might help the Browns defense with the pursuit that they now have. I think the coverage on the tight ends is going to be more of where JOK specifically helps us stop Lamar, whatever that is, rather than chasing him down on foot. That's just my opinion here as we sit here in August. Obviously, as it unfolds, that could be different, but that's what I thought during the draft cycle, and that's what I think now.
I think you know what, I started having this thought recently, and as we've moved ahead towards the new season, the Buffalo Bills held the Ravens to 3 points in the playoffs. I feel like they laid a blueprint of how to contain Lamar and stop the Ravens. And so I don't know enough yet about what the Bills defense is compared to what the Browns defense is and all of that. But what I do know is that there is a team that had the personnel and found a way to make Lamar to just contain him. And if so very few teams have been able to do that. And so I think, especially the one thing that did stick out to me, not knowing the schematics and the X's and O's, is just that Buffalo looked fast. And, and as you both alluded to, it just always felt like the Browns defense was a step slow. Mark Andrews and those 2 touchdowns in week 1 were like just soul crushing because it felt like he could do whatever he wanted that game.
Yeah.
And so I'm just hoping that as the Browns have added the speed that we've talked about with JOK and Jacob Phillips and John Johnson and all of that stuff, that we can close that gap. Because obviously, if you have the right people, it's doable. And for a long time, it felt like the Browns were just never going to stop Lamar. That was just all you were going to hope to do is Nick Chubb go nuclear like he did a few years ago. And just dominate the time of possession to beat them, because that. And so I'm hoping finally we don't just have to hope to outscore, that we can really hope to contain.
Yeah, it's he's one of those guys, and it's become cliche, but I'm old enough to remember when it was a new thing that Dan Patrick said on SportsCenter, and we all thought it was cool. You can't stop him. You can only hope to contain him. Lamar Jackson's just too good. There's just nobody like him. He's so good. So if you can just slow him down enough, then I think we have the offensive weapons to keep up with them. And, especially that terrific Sunday night or Monday night game, whichever one it was that we ended up losing at the very end. But boy, what a football game. By then, and then, as the season wore on after that, there was just nobody. They were so decimated from COVID and from regular injuries and everything. Poor Andrew Sandejo got asked to do stuff that he's just not equipped to do, but there was nobody else out there, and he took the ire of the fan base because of it. But I mean, by the end of that Ravens game, I think they were like 2 calls away from calling me to come play safety. That's how decimated they were. It was, I mean, people, the defense was terrible last year. Who was there at the end? I mean, there's only so many guys that you can do it with, and this year it looks like they have the depth and the talent, assuming some relatively year injury wise, that you're right. I think they're not going to have to win 50-48. I think they can, pull off a 31-30 or a 35-28 or a 28-24 or something like that is more realistic this year than it was in years past as far as it pertains to the Ravens.
I've starred this question a million times here, so I've got to get it. I got to get this one in. So I got to know, a Pop-Tart, right? Is that a sandwich or a ravioli?
Oh my goodness, that's a segue right there. I've been on stand-up comedy stages for a quarter of a century. I have never put together a segue like that. Lamar Jackson to Pop-Tart. I don't know. I've always thought of it as more like a cake or a brownie or something like that, because I don't know. Maybe it was an Ohio thing growing up where I grew up, but I never really toasted. I know you're supposed to technically on the box. I never toasted them. I think they're better untoasted personally. Yeah. So in that case, since they're not toasted, it's, breading and sugary colored filling. So I have always thought of it as more of a cookie or a brownie or something like that.
My wife said it was a Danish.
Realistic. I get that. Yeah.
I think it's a ravioli because it has closed edges and then it has a pocket for stuff.
You can tell it's August because we have this to talk about here. Yeah. Week 14, I don't think we're going to be doing any Pop-Tart questions if you have me back on.
Well, you see, that's the thing, Stephen. You would think that there wouldn't be, but Jacob always has one.
There's always one.
Well, I am always #team weird, so I love it. That's great.
I asked I asked Bree. What had happened, we've done a couple of them. We're going to be doing one very soon. We've done a couple of them where we've gotten some Browns Twitter personalities and fans of the show to come on the show with us, and just each of them got about, 20, 30 minutes, and we just kind of talk with them for whatever they want to talk about Browns wise. And I always have to have one in the back pocket.
Yeah,
Sure.
And we did a couple of those episodes during the dead time as part of our way to get through it. And one of the questions I had, and then the following week, our good friend Ed in Columbus, who is one of our patrons, so he will be listening tonight to this show. He already told me he would. And he's the best. Ed in Columbus is the best. And I asked him this question. He then kept spamming it in the chat so that I would ask Bree. We had Bree from That's What V Said on the show.
Right.
The week after that.
She's great.
Yeah,
the whole crew is great.
And so he made me ask her where the weirdest place she ever peed was. So that is one of my favorite questions, which she told me as a kid, she was a great sport. I was like, I'm not going to ask her. And she was like, no, ask me. And she made me ask her. And she was like, well, as a kid, she was afraid of like public restrooms. So as a kid, she would get out and just squat next to the car, the door of the car, and she would just pee next to the wheel of the car. And that's what she did. Pop-Tarts.
Speaking of wheels, I think ours have come off here.
They're gone.
Yeah.
I just want to say one thing, because you mentioned are they patrons? Are they Patreons? Patrons. So we have 4 of them, and I know you referenced them, but to Jessica, to Ed in Columbus, to MC Lawrence, and to Andy, of course. Thank you all. I mean, I and I know we referenced this just really quickly, but the fact that we even have a dime coming to us is it still hasn't set in. It is stupid. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. I don't know where all of this is gonna go, but I'm really excited because both Jacob and I want to bring so much, and so to anyone that's listening that has helped support us along the way so far in this how long have we been doing this? Basically since the draft, right?
4 months, yeah.
Yeah. Time flies when you're having fun. Thank you for allowing us to have this. And you know what? I was looking forward to this all day. It's like just being able to do this is so much fun. And so thank you.
Well, you guys deserve it. Absolutely. And if you can, even just a little bit, I mean, you want to talk about what's stupid? The OBR hired me and they pay me. So I told them that at the beginning. I was like, Barry, it's your funeral, man. All right.
Are you sure?
Okay. But yeah, I know exactly how you feel. It's a blessing to be able to talk about the Browns and make even just a tiny, whatever, I mean, because the way I said it was, I sit around talk and tweet about the Browns all day anyway. If I can make a couple bucks on the side, that's even better. So you guys do great work, and I know that you're always in our chat on our Twitch channel, so I appreciate that tremendously. So would love to talk to you. I'm having a good time. I'm having a blast.
All right, we're gonna move to the offensive side of the ball, and a guy that me and Nick are big on. A couple of weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, you guys had Jeff Lloyd on. Is that correct? Was it 2 weeks ago? Okay. So I slid into the chat on that and asked a question for that the 3 of you answered. And I'm going to kind of bring it back because I think that times have changed just a little bit. Training camp having opened and whatnot. It was specific one player, one Michael Dunn. We are big Michael Dunn fans on this show. And I asked you guys a question about, it was Dunn or Forbes, because for me at that time, it seemed like those two were battling, but I have actually kind of changed my tune. It was based on something that Jake observed at the Orange and Brown practice on Sunday. And so I no longer think it's Forbes and Dunn. I think Forbes is going for Nick Harris's roster spot. And I'm starting to, and Jake, and I did not know this because I had heard that Blake Hance had some snapping ability. So I thought, oh, wow, that might be how Blake Hance potentially makes the roster, because I don't think Nick Harris is anything but a center. And I think that that handcuffs you. I'm not sure I just don't think he has the size to play guard. It's a very, very small sample size of him playing guard in the NFL. Sure. Michael Dunn shut down one of, if not the best defensive tackle in Cam Hayward and he practiced, in a parking lot. Mm-hmm. And he didn't even have Bill Callahan. Like I know Bill Callahan was there, but Bill Callahan was out with COVID too for that game. He was also not there. And we love Michael Dunn here. Is there a realistic obviously there's a realistic chance that Michael Dunn makes the roster. I think overall there's a good chance. I'm not saying he will. Where do you stand on Michael Dunn? And could the Browns, I said this before, I don't think Andrew Berry's ego in saying, I drafted that guy last year will force him to keep a guy.
Right.
If he thinks Michael Dunn's better than Nick Harris, then Michael Dunn makes the roster, Nick Harris is gone. I just don't think he cares about egos. It's not John Dorsey and Chad Thomas. Anyway, side note, Nick was at the practice where Pharaoh Brown and Chad Thomas fought.
Nice.
He was.
And I got to see the in-person flipping of the bird
when Chad Thomas flipped everybody off, which is my favorite part of the story. So, where do you stand on Michael Dunn making the roster overall? And could it be? And if it is, if he does, is it at Nick Harris's expense?
I think you're absolutely hitting the nail on the head there, because if you remember, as far back as that practice, they told him, practice snapping the ball too, just in case, because he did it a little bit, I think, his freshman year in college. I knew all this stuff during the draft cycle because I was looking at the offensive line, but it's slipping me, so I might be off a little bit there. And I remember they had said something during OTAs and mini camp and all that kind of stuff about we might look at him, give him a few reps. And I know that they have. I don't think he's done any in team, an 11-on-11, but I think he's taken some reps at center and individual and positional drills and stuff like that. And I've said all off season, if he shows that he can also snap the ball, that would be a tremendous feather in his cap, because as good as he was in that game, and the same goes for Blake Hance, there's a reason they bounced around for a while. Was that just they found the magic for a week or 2 weeks or whatever? Because if you remember, Blake Hance not only did well in the Pittsburgh game, he played left tackle against Kansas City and played really well, actually, which was shocking. But most of the time when guys bounce around for 4, 5, 6 years, there's a reason for that. So was it just a one? I don't know. I'm not purporting to know, but that's the question that has to be answered. But you look at it. I had the depth chart. Let me see if I can find it again. There we go. You're looking at, because that's another spot. You asked me, who am I going to be looking at in the preseason? 6 through 10. 6 through 9 or 10, depending on who they keep on the offensive line, is one of the most fascinating battles, because they have like 7 guys that could play there. And I think if he shows the versatility, because that's a word I have loved for years and years and years, and thankfully they finally got a front office that's looking for it in the draft and bringing people in like that, then I would think that he and Drew Forbes and James Hudson and Chris Hubbard, they have all shown that they can play 2 positions. And if you're going to be a swing offensive lineman in the NFL, you got to play at least 2. You have to almost, except in very specific circumstances. And I'm with you. I like Nick. I liked the pick at the time, but it was a 5th round pick. So I think that's a little easier for them to move on from after 1 year than a top 100 pick, like we talked about earlier. I still think they would ultimately like for their guys to step up. And Nick Harris apparently has had a pretty good camp. But I'm with you. I don't know that he can play guard at the NFL level. So I think Michael Dunn has a really good shot to make this roster. And like you said, if he shows that he can snap the ball behind J.C. Tretter, that is a huge thing. Because other than that, Javon Patterson is listed as a center on the roster. And I really don't know much about him because we haven't seen or heard from him in a year and a half. I mean, he really hasn't done much. I don't know if Colby Gossett or Cordell Awawu can snap. I have no idea if they can snap the ball. I have no idea if James Hudson could snap the ball. I think they want him to be a tackle and maybe an emergency guard, kind of like Chris Hubbard. But, in a pinch, somebody's got to snap the damn ball. So all these guys probably got to be able to do it at some point. And I know that they love Alex Taylor as a developmental. I don't know if they can sneak him onto the practice squad. But I also think the numbers are just so heavily against him that I don't know that he's going to make it as just a tackle. So as it relates to the backup offensive line overall, I think it's very fascinating, and I think Dunn is definitely a huge player. Whether that's at center/guard or just at guard, I couldn't say. But yeah, if he continues to show that he's one of the 4 best guards on the team, and they think he can be the backup center, as we've said for a couple positions now, versatility wins. And this isn't the 2016 roster where anybody with a pulse is probably going to make it. This is a Super Bowl contending roster, which is still an extremely weird sentence to come out of your mouth talking about our favorite team, but it is. So, I mean, you not only got to play, you got to play at a high level to make this 53. And I'm with you guys. I really like Michael Dunn's potential. The question is, and Bill Callahan is the guy to answer this, were those 2 playoff games just he found the magic for a short period and he's really just a guy? Or did he find another level being in this system? And can Bill Callahan take him and consistently to that level? That's the question that has to be answered.
I think, it's interesting. Admittedly, I'm biased because of what Michael Dunn did for us and just the story of, practicing in the parking lot and all of that. But the story of Wyatt Teller lends me to believe, or lends me to be, and I'm optimistic to begin with, but that Michael Dunn has found something and can be a contributor for the Browns. So I'm really excited about.
Similar way as Teller, is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Just the fact that Teller. I mean the Bills just said goodbye, and so I don't think anyone projected Wyatt Teller to be like the NFL's, arguably the NFL's number 1 guard last year.
I thought he was going to lose the battle to Drew Forbes. I mean, I'll tell you that right now. I've said that many a time. So no, I did not. I love Wyatt Teller, but.
Well, I think Teller is the example that situation matters not only for quarterbacks, but for everybody, because he scuffled in Buffalo. It just wasn't the right system for him. And then he comes here and his skill set, and everybody talks about the Browns being a zone running team, and they do a lot of zone blocking concepts, but they also run a lot of power, a lot more gap than I thought. And he's a mauler. He's one of those, if you played in high school, we all had 1 or 2 guys. They didn't care about the score. They didn't care about where the ball was. All they wanted to do was knock the guy down across from him and then stand over him. We all know those guys. He's one of those guys. He truly he gets the endorphin rush out of seeing his guy's face hit the dirt. And as a fan, I love that. So you got to wonder, as much as everybody's saying he might move on after this year, they might not be able to afford him. And he might. We have no idea how these contract dominoes are going to fall. Is he going to be Wyatt Teller without Bill Callahan and not in this schedule? I don't know. I think he can be. But I think part of offensive linemen in this system, they also have to know they got a good thing going here. And so it's hard to lead. Take a little bit less to stay in a system that loves you. Stay with Bill Callahan. Stay with a system that accentuates your skill set. I don't know. I think every player should get the bag as much as they can while they can, because it could all end like that. But that's something that they got to consider. And I'm with you. Maybe Michael Dunn, is, like you said, similar to Wyatt Teller. This is his spot, And just quickly, his story is great. Blake Hance's story is great. Whether they make the roster and become Cleveland Browns for years or not, they'll never have to pay for a beer in Cleveland ever again. Those are just 2 great stories, and I love both of those guys.
I know. It was on your show. I can't remember who it was that came up with it. Maybe it was Jeff Lloyd. Suggested opening up a bar named Blake.
Yeah.
And
that's amazing.
That was I was in tears, but because it would work.
Oh, absolutely. No. You tell me I can go to a Browns post game at some bar named Blake. I'm there. I'm there. Well, 25-year-old me wouldn't be there. This version of me would probably be like, it's too loud. I'm going home. But it's still a good idea. Yeah.
I had a beer. I went home. Nick, if you got one, let's get one last question in, and then we have a competition between me and Steven that's going to take place.
Okay. So I'm not sure it's a question so much as just talking about offense.
Yeah.
I don't know how much he's going to play, but I am a Harrison Bryant stan, and hearing that he gained 13 pounds, I actually think that Harrison Bryant very quietly had a tremendous rookie season, because we talked about some of defensive tackle being one of the most difficult positions for a rookie to play. I mean, there's no doubt that tight end is easily one of the most difficult positions. And I think about that Cincinnati game that he scored 2 touchdowns. I think that about the fact that he managed to contribute while being in the rotation that he was. And I know Njoku was hurt for a period of time, but I thought Harrison Bryant very, very underratedly had a nice rookie season, and I can't wait to see, because they said, he needed to put on weight, and he has. So I'm really excited to see what he can bring to the table. And I don't know how much he's going to play in preseason, because I know he's the third, but I'm assuming he'll play some.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Harrison Bryant had a nice rookie year. He fell off the second half. He hit a rookie wall, and I don't know how much just was typical rookie wall, how much of it was because, as you said, and everybody knew, he was far more of a receiver than a blocker, and he wasn't ready for NFL men coming at him on the other side of the field, especially coming from a place like Florida Atlantic. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's it's not the SEC. I think and then that fumble in which game was that he had the fumble that
Las Vegas.
Was it the Raider game? Yeah, you're right. It was the Raider game. I think that really got in his head because after that, he was never quite the same.
He was always carrying it like that after that.
Right. Yeah, I think he was thinking a lot last year, as is the case with a lot of rookies. And like you said, the tight end position is traditionally one of, if not the slowest developing positions in the NFL. There are very few Gronks and Kittles out there that come out and blast out of the gate pretty much right away. That's why we know their names, because they're special, they're different. And I think as far as the Browns tight end room as a whole, everybody's talking who's going to be the one, who's going to be the two, who's going to. I think the fact that we have a legitimate discussion with 3 guys means whichever way it falls out, we're in good shape. Okay, yeah. I'm not worried about that. I'm an Njoku guy. I have been since the beginning, and I think if he gets a chance, he will break out this year if he stays healthy. Whether that means he stays here next year or not, I can't say. But as far as this year goes, I think Harrison Bryant definitely has a role. How big that is, I think that shakes out in the preseason and as the season goes along. But yeah, he put on, I'm not impressed with putting on 13 pounds. I can do that in a week. But, apparently he did it with muscle, which is a different story. But yeah, I'm excited to see the jump that he makes this year and especially next year. Year 3 for a tight end is usually where I see what I want to see or not see from a guy. But as far as his role this year, and I think last year as well, even though Njoku was hurt for some, he came into a very good situation for a guy like himself who needed that development coming from a smaller school, not being much of a blocker at that time. He's apparently much better now, and the reports on his blocking in camp have been tremendous. So kudos to him for seeing what he needed to work on and doing it and putting in the work. That's fantastic. This coaching staff pretty much makes it clear if you're a tight end or a wide receiver, no block, no rock. And they all have taken that to heart. But I think the fact that he didn't have to come in and be the guy, it was a tremendous advantage for him, much the same way it was for DPJ. DPJ could come in. He didn't have to be the guy. He had Odell and Jarvis there. They weren't, so he could learn. And then this year he's going to take a step, and hopefully by next year he'll take an even bigger step. And I think Harrison Bryant is on potentially a similar trajectory. I think we could see a very good Harrison Bryant this year, a guy who contributes in key spots because of the way Kevin Stefanski's offense is. I don't think you're going to see any single tight end go over 70 catches or something like that. I think you're going to see, 40 for Hooper, 35 for Njoku, 27 for Harrison, or some kind of spread like that. That's just the way this offense is. But just because he doesn't stuff the stat sheet doesn't mean that he hasn't taken a big step forward. If he contributes in the areas that he's asked to contribute in, then perhaps next year will be the year that he becomes a tight end that the rest of the league notices. I'm with you on Harrison Bryant.
All right.
It's weird because I got a couple of alerts there for a second because there's preseason football happening right now. Right. And the fact that is happening, I got a notification that Joe Flacco just threw a 73-yard touchdown against the Steelers. Apparently it was all yak, but that was Joe Flacco, and the Steelers are losing 13-0. And
in 2012, that would have been huge news. Yeah.
It's Mason Rudolph is not good. Anyway, I got a David Njoku story. We didn't tell this story because I thought that it might get him in trouble. But then I thought about it and I was like, if he was going to get in trouble for this, he would have gotten in trouble. It wasn't a secret what David did. So as you may know, the Browns are not currently able to go over and like sign stuff for fans at training camp. I think they're allowed to do some limited stuff with the VIP people because they were able to sign something and toss it to some people. Like they were able to do things like that, but not. David Njoku, when we were up there on the 31st, said to hell with it, put his stuff down, came over and just started signing stuff for people. And he got in trouble. He got quickly corralled and brought in, which like, man, like I was glad I didn't see him get fined or something for it because like I would just didn't want him to be punished for that. But like David Njoku liked a tweet of mine once, no big deal. No big deal. But I'm a Njoku guy. Like I'm with you. I've been a Njoku guy. I am on record of saying that Njoku gets an extension, and I think because correct me if I'm wrong, there is an out in Austin Hooper's contract. And
after next year, it becomes more palatable. It's not clean, but it becomes more palatable. And I'm with you. I think he will have a year that deserves an extension. Whether that domino falls in his favor, because we all know the situation the Browns are in as far as future contracts, I can't say, but I'm with you. I was surprised when they picked him. I did not think they were going to pick him in the first round the year that they did, but I immediately became a fan and have been a fan ever since. It's 2018 before he hurt his wrist. People forget. Dude was a monster.
He was 21.
Well, that's the other thing about it. He's been in the league 5 years. He's 24 years old. This is the age guardrail, folks. This is what people scream at me about. This is the age guardrail. You're giving a second contract, which is the big one, to guys who are 25, 6, not 28 or 29. This is the whole point of it. But yeah, I think he had that big year, potential big year. Then he hurt his wrist. 2019. The Freddie year, we can throw that entire year out the window as far as evaluating a lot of players. Last year was COVID, so I don't say you throw it out, but you gotta put an asterisk by everybody's performance, good or bad, last year, because we don't know. It was such a weird year. I think if things are whatever normal passes for this year, I think he is set up to have a big year, and I think they could afford it the way that they've structured it, and I think they did this intentionally, was that they could carry him with a relatively big-size contract and Austin Hooper's contract next year, and then the year after that, Austin Hooper's contract drops off, and then maybe they give Harrison Bryant a bump up in pay, or they have just one big contract in that room for a year or two. I think they do things sequentially, very, very smart, the way they set up the sequence of their contracts. But I'm with you. I think he will have a year that deserves an extension. I want him here. Chief, if you're watching this, I am on your side, man. I'm not saying anything negative against you. I'm just saying it's an unknown. I'm not telling you anything you don't know.
Same with Wyatt Teller.
Exactly.
It's the same situation.
I want to keep them all, but that's just not feasible. These are rich people problems, folks. Browns fans, we're going to have to get used to this. We're going to have to let guys go that are really good. That's what good teams do. That's what Super Bowl contending teams do. Like we said earlier in the podcast, we've watched the Steelers do that for decades. They lost this guy because they couldn't keep him, and they just plugged somebody else in. Let's hope the Browns stay in that cycle for as long as the Steelers and the Ravens have. That would be a nice change of pace in the AFC North.
There's always an edge rusher in the top 10 on Pittsburgh. Yep. Pittsburgh always has at minimum at least one, if not more, but they always have at least one edge that you would label a top 10 guy. Like it always feels like it.
So crushed when Alex Highsmith went their way in the draft last year. I wanted him so bad. And if he was going to go anywhere else, anywhere but Pittsburgh or Baltimore, please. And he went, and he's showing exactly what I thought he could do. Boy, I really like that guy.
You know, my guy this year that happened to is Rashad Bateman. I was a huge Bateman guy, and I sat well, not on this show. We were dabbling before me and Nick put this show together, but we did a couple of Twitter lives where we just kind of like got on a chat room and we're just talking, the two of us. And I sat there and I looked him right in the face and I said, I love Bateman. And I think Bateman was in play at 26. I think when Greg Newsome was there, nobody else was in play because there were it was Greg Newsome, or it's just like the line, from draft day, Greg Newsome or bust. I think once that happened that way, which Greg Newsome and JOK, I still can't figure out how you have both of those guys. And you didn't I know you traded up for JOK.
Didn't give much.
No, you swapped a third with a fourth. It was like 15 places.
Robbery.
It was so woo. I lost my train of thought there. Wow.
You're talking about Rashad Bateman, and I'm with you. We have said for a long time that the Ravens apparently listen to our draft shows at the OBR because everybody that Jake and I like, they take every year, and it's just infuriating.
I told Nick, I said, the Ravens are going to draft this kid, aren't they? And he goes, yeah, probably. And then 4 days later, what happens? All right, so we're going to wrap this thing up. I challenge Steven. Now, this is not fair. He is a professional stand-up comedian. But I have challenged Steven to a dad-off. And that is to say that we both have one dad joke. If Nick thinks they are both very, very good, then maybe we'll say a second one. I don't know. I've got some in the chamber in case. I'm sure Steven's got a couple.
Oh, I got a bunch, yeah.
So what we'll do is we'll both tell one. Nick will say if we need to tell another one. And then next week, around Monday or Tuesday, I'm going to put a poll up and ask who won the dad joke off. I guess we should probably tell two apiece because that feels
reasonable.
That feels reasonable, right?
I'm up for it.
Okay. All right. So, Steven, you're the guest, so you can choose if you would like to go first or if you'd like me to go first, whichever one.
Yeah, you go ahead and go first.
All right. So, I was reading the news the other day, right? And I saw this article, and I was really concerned. So, did you hear about the kidnapping at the elementary school?
What kidnapping?
No, it's all right. He woke up.
See, I love that. 'Cause I have a 22-year-old daughter. So I have, whether I make dad jokes or not, she rolls her eyes at me. So I figured I might as well lean into it. And for those of you out there, younger women and younger guys that don't have kids yet, let me speak for dads. We know the jokes are terrible. Okay. We don't actually believe these are funny jokes. That's not the entertainment for us. The entertainment for me was always watching my daughter's eyes roll back in her head so far and so fast that I could actually hear them smack the back of her skull. That's the entertainment for me in telling these. My favorite dad joke isn't even really a dad joke. It's just oh God, Dad, I'm starving. And I go, hi, starving, I'm Dad. I did that to her 2 days ago. She's 22 years old. And she was just like, Dad, when are you going to stop? I go, never. So that's my favorite dad joke, but it's not really a dad joke, So I've got a few. My favorite, I don't know if it actually qualifies as a dad joke or not, but I'll lead with this one.
Okay.
A little boy asks his grandpa, Grandpa, will you make a frog sound? Grandpa says, yeah, but why? And the little boy says, well, Grandma said after you croak, we can go to Hawaii. I don't know if that qualifies as a dad joke or not, because dad jokes are usually more puns.
It does.
But that's one of my favorite jokes right there. I love that joke.
I like that a lot.
So this is obviously completely a joke. I am very happily married, but when I was single, I was working really hard on the dating sites, and I saw some things on those places. They are scary, scary places. And I went to my dad for advice, and I said, Dad, I want to meet someone that's a hillbilly like us, right? And my dad is I love my dad, but like he says like Washington and we're very poosh, that's I said, so Dad, how do you attract, like how do you get the attention of a country girl? And he said, well, a tractor.
See, I love that. That sounds like something because my dad is from Southeast Ohio. My dad grew up in Cheshire, just outside of Gallipolis in the 50s when it was.
I was born in Gallipolis.
Yeah, so you know where it is. And it's still tiny, but when he grew up, it was tiny. So yeah, that's the side that I'm on as well. So yeah, I love those kind of things. Yeah, I got a few other ones. Yeah, you think a kangaroo can jump higher than the Empire State Building?
I don't know.
Yeah, the Empire State Building can't jump.
Yeah, I knew where that one was going.
You know why a centipede has 100 legs? So he can walk.
Yeah. Hey,
and one of my favorites. I tell this one for. I'm sure you guys probably follow Ryan Burns, good friend of mine, big time attorney out here in Southern California. Very super nice guy, great attorney. But a guy walks into a lawyer's office and he says, "Are you a criminal attorney?" And the lawyer says, "Well, nobody's been able to prove that yet."
So, yeah. I was really worried when I left work. I'm starting to worry about my calendar. Its days are numbered.
See, I'm loving these. I'm
really excited. This isn't my forte, but I'm a very happy audience right now.
Two cannibals are eating dinner. One guy turns to the other. He says, I got to tell you, I don't care much for your wife. The other then just eat the vegetables. These are terrible. They're just terrible.
That one, you win, man. That one got me so good.
Guy walks into the doctor's office. Doctor says, I got good news and bad news. Which do you want first? Guy says, give me the good news. Doctor says, well, you're about to have a disease named after you. I know, they're terrible. I love that.
I like them.
Do you know what Tennessee?
Same thing that Arkansas.
Yeah. I use that one on Twitter. Sometimes I did Dad Joke Thursdays for a while, and then I got into some heat over a couple of them. But all right, guys, we're gonna get y'all out of here. It was great. We absolutely love having you, Steven. I know everybody already knows, but please, where can everybody find you?
Most of the time, you can find me on Twitter at Browns Mock Draft. I have little to no life, so I'm usually on there most days. So you can find everything that I write or any of our shows. We usually publish on the OBR.com. Please follow our new Twitch channel, which has gone but we thought it would be good. We thought it would be a big hit because nobody else in Cleveland is doing it right now. But it's gone way beyond even our wildest expectations. We're on there during the preseason 3 or 4 nights a week. During the regular season, the plan is to be 7 nights a week, every single night at 7 o'clock with 2 hours of live Browns coverage. And the way this season goes, the way we all think it's going to go, it's going to be a blast. It's going to be so much fun. But what is it? The OBR_Browns. If you just follow me or follow the OBR, we'll tweet it out, the link, stuff like that. But that's where you can find us. And thank you guys for having me on. I had a good time. I had a blast. I love you guys, what you do. I love that you're always in our Twitch chat, which is, as you can tell everybody, is a lot more fun than you might think.
It really is.
A lot of people think like I did, that Twitch is just for people watching video games. I thought that like a month and a half ago. That's what I thought, and I've learned it's so much more. It's actually a really fun platform, and we're thrilled to be there. So thank you guys for doing that. Thank you for supporting me. Thank you for asking me to come on your show. I'm sincerely appreciative, and I hope the dad jokes at the end didn't ruin the experience for some of your listeners.
I really enjoyed them. Yeah, I'm just saying. So thank you both. Jacob and Steven, this has been great. If you don't follow Steven already, you definitely should. And just as someone who watches Twitch constantly, more than I watch anything else, I definitely think you should follow the OBR on Twitch. That is a lot of coverage. Hats off to you. Oh man, that's gonna be a lot. So because Jacob and I are talking about trying to make a second show work potentially, and we're trying to figure out the logistics of that. So I can't even imagine putting in that's awesome. That congratulations.
It's a total team effort. There's a tremendous team over there. I still can't believe they added me to it. I honestly have no idea what they were thinking, but apparently it's worked out to this point. And Fred's been around a long time. He knows a lot of people. Jake knows a lot of people. We had Eric Metcalf the other night. We've got some other players. I'm not going to give any names now, but we've got some other former legends that are talking about coming on with us. We had Cameron Justice on, did a fantastic job. Mark Schofield was a great guest. Last night we had Alan Bell from CBS Sportsline, who's a gambling and odds expert. I like Alan a lot. I followed him on Twitter. I was expecting like 15 minutes. We did 40 minutes, and I was sorry that it was over. It was fascinating stuff for me. So, yeah, we're having a ball. I mean, if the people that are watching are having half as much fun as we are, then it's a great success. So thank you for your kind words about the Twitch channel.
Yeah. No, and you know what? I don't know where the time went. This was awesome. So this is episode 17, isn't it?
Well, we're not numbering this one.
Okay.
So this is special episode 1. That's what
special episode 1. I like that. I like that a lot. Even though we're not numbering it, it's special episode 1.
Yeah, I said we weren't numbering it, and then immediately assigned it a number.
So as always, thank you to everyone who has supported us, and I hope you like this one. Jacob and I want to do a lot more of this. So I'm Nick. He's Jacob. Thank you again, Steven. And as always, go Browns.